Good morning. My name is Nick Gage, CEO and President of the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the entire team, I'd like to welcome you to the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce's BizDev series of educational workshops. The goal of our educational series is to inform and to educate our business owners and consumers on today's relevant topics of discussion that impact them both today and in the future. Now, today's workshop spotlights Momentum Leadership, one of our most engaging chamber members. And our guest educator is founder and CEO Sharon Wagner. Now, for those that may not have had the opportunity to engage with Momentum Leadership, I would like to share that vision, communication, and individual development is the cornerstone of the remarkable work led by Sharon Wagner. Now, Sharon is a retired Army veteran, corporate executive, as well as a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member and executive director. She has guided individuals, small business owners, and corporate teams on a journey of discovery, self-reflection, organizational development, and a sustainable path to success. Now, in today's workshop, Sharon will take a deep dive into defining resilience. What does it mean? Key characteristics of resilient leaders and the signs of mastering life's greatest challenges and the essential role change management principles can be utilized as a guiding path for successful navigating turbulent times. Sharon, I'm extremely happy and excited to have you on today's workshop, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Here you go, Sharon.
Great. Thank you, Nick, for such a warm welcome. We'll go ahead and get started. Leading during uncertainty. It definitely is in today's environment and very fitting for discussion. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to talk a little bit about navigating uncertainty, what it is. I will talk about change management and then also building resilience. So we'll go ahead and kick off. I always like to start off by definitions, if you will. So Wikipedia, and basically uncertainty is any situation where we don't have the full information. It's not 100% known. And it talks about predictions as well. We're not able to predict the future, which is always challenging when we're trying to make decisions because we need all of that information, especially when we come upon decision making, whether it's in our business, whether it's in our personal lives. It's extremely important. So that kind of gives us the foundation and basis for the uncertainty. And then sources of uncertainty. I know we've all experienced uncertainty over time, both in our personal and business environments. Today's discussion is going to focus primarily on the business discussions and different impacts on our business, as well as just our overall way and foundation that we address the changes. So we all are familiar with the COVID pandemic. That would probably, if we were looking at a scale, that's at the high end, high scale. And then some of the other uncertainty changes are a little bit smaller, but it still causes the same impact. So we talk about the COVID pandemic, everything from looking at the supply chain disruptions. To me, that was the largest impact, as well as the second bullet, which is the hybrid work environment. I know during the pandemic, we ended up working from home. We did that paradigm shift, and it seemed like it worked out fairly well, probably a lot better than we had anticipated. But then as we started to go back to work, we started out with that hybrid work environment. And so what did that look like? And that changed and caused uncertainty and concern with a lot of the employees. And then the next item that we talk about is organizational changes. It could be as simple as, hey, I have a new manager. I have someone new that's going to be coming in as my leader, and it's causing me a little bit of anxiety, if you will. Organizational changes could be also a company selling out. So we have a new venture capitalist that's coming on board. We have a new vice president. And so those are all organizational changes at different varying levels. We also have technology changes. AI has been one of the big topics in the news lately. We have new software changes. Agile has now been introduced over the last several years as well. So a lot of those technology changes is another uncertainty that can be caused for a lot of folks. Most recently, the government shutdown. We had people that weren't getting paid. We had the federal and government services that were closed and not available. And that caused a lot of uncertainty and a little bit of concern for folks in the environment. And then economical changes. So there's interest rates, there's the home buying, the home market took a big turn just as I was selling my home this last year. So those economical changes can just really cause havoc and cause concern for folks. And I'm sure we can come up with a whole list of other uncertainties that you've experienced, but those were just a few that have come up over time. Uncertain times. A true test of a leader is their ability to lead during crisis and uncertainty. And unfortunately, unpredictability is kind of our new norm. And we need to learn to be able to navigate and just kind of adapt and be flexible during these changes. And so that's a little bit of a challenge as well. And then I think also just kind of going through the process of remaining agile instead of reacting to the today's emergencies. It's just being a little bit more proactive and being able to just focus then on the culture, the vision, and your strategic aspects. And this last section, I just talked a little bit about uncertain times can create feelings for individuals. And so there's anxiety, there's panic, stress, fear of the unknown, and mental health crisis. And so in all of these cases, we should not take this lightly, either for ourselves or for our employees, because it's true and it's something that they're experiencing. And it can definitely have an impact on the business and how we're leading during these challenging times. So for today, I am just discussing two topics: how to effectively handle change management and building resilience. And here's a whole list of other examples of strategies or actions that we can take to get us through in the long term, if you will. But since we only have an hour, and I love to talk about those topics, it's also near and dear to me. The effective handling change management for me is traditionally a 1-day workshop. And then building resilience is about a half a day. So as you can see, there are just so many steps and these different actions. So we'll just focus on the two. But there's a lot of other actions that companies take to get them through these challenging times. Okay, so we'll go ahead and kick off effectively handling change management. So this is John Maxwell. As Nick mentioned, I'm a member of the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team, and John actually is one of my mentors. So he says change is inevitable and growth is optional. So by change, it's just as we've been discussing, it's constant and unavoidable. And it's just part of our everyday lives, whether in our personal lives or in our business. Change is going to happen, and it's happening more often. And so we'll get into some discussion about that. Growth, on the other hand, is how we respond to those changes. We make conscious choices in how we adapt, how we are learning, and how we are adjusting through a lot of these different changes. So that is what is meant by change is inevitable, growth is optional. So we talk about change and the cost of change fatigue. That's been a new concept that's been introduced lately. There are so many things that are changing. And again, we'll just stick to the work environment. But in 2025, it was just an amazing year where we started to recognize that employees are becoming overwhelmed with the amount of changes that they're having to accept. There's a Gallup poll, and it states 87% of the employees were experiencing workplace burnout, with change overload being a key factor. And to me, I did experience it over my last several years in the corporate environment. And for me, it was one of the largest key factors. And it's not just a problem for the individual employees. We are seeing CEOs, our leaders, everyone in the whole environment is getting burnt out at such a high rate. And with this change and burnout, people are getting disengaged. Morale is low. And then we just have higher turnover. And we saw that during all of the COVID-19 changes and stress that led to mass exodus. So a lot of employees, because of that fear factor and their emotions, ended up just leaving the business environment. So ask yourself a couple questions. How are you and your team handling constant change? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling the pressure to keep up? Have you noticed your employees having challenges as well? So it's always just making sure that you're aware and have that situational awareness that you're in tune with what's happening in your organization, your team. Let's go through statistics. I'm the type that when I'm making change or going through the process and deciding what change is going to take place, I always like to look at the data. And so the data is telling us that 33% of organizations identify that there's a resistance to change. And it could be change overload, it could be we've always done it that way, but that is a real fact. And then the next statistics that we've looked at is 18% of employees would consider leaving their job if faced with a major organizational change. Earlier, I had mentioned about capital ventures coming in, purchasing out a company, or a major shakeup. We have, say, a vice president was fired, and we brought in someone new. Those are major organizational changes that just leave employees feeling uncomfortable. And this last one is just amazing because it's something that we can control. 40% of employees state their organizations did not adequately communicate changes during a recent initiative. And if you think about it, that is sad because that is one thing that we can control is how we communicate and spread the word about the upcoming changes, the impacts, and just the overall process. And this next one is 41% of the employees state that a lack of trust in leadership is the primary reasons for resistance. So as leaders, we need to make sure that we create that environment of trust and we continue and the first place to do that is communication. So we need to have that transparency in our communication and making sure that we foster that trust in our team and our organization. So with that data, we can then be informed and understand and help us with those informed decisions about change management, if you will. So that's the data that's telling us that employees are burnt out, they're resisting change. So let's make sure that we're managing changes effectively. And it's the process of helping individuals just go through a change. We're going from the current state to a future state, and how do we get there? And again, communication is critical. We're going to make sure that we implement the change while also at the same time minimizing disruptions because we want to be able to continue the business while we're also implementing the change. And that's always a fine line to be able to manage both. Here are some recommended change management steps. Number one is planning. And so as we are faced with a situation, any of the ones that we've already discussed, planning is always your first step. And you're developing the strategy, understanding what you need, what's going to change, what resources we need. You're putting together that. My background is project management, so I always put together a detailed Microsoft project schedule from start to finish on how I'm going to implement a change. So just that planning phase is extremely key and critical. Then you go into communication. But we already mentioned that communication is lacking. And I would say that since communication is critical, it's often a misstep. People and leaders just get into, oh, I've got a change to make. Let's just go implement it. So they're so focused on the execution that they forget to stop and maintain that communication. And we talked earlier about all those feelings that are happening, anxiety, stress, mental health crisis. If we don't communicate, then that continues to fester. But if you communicate, and I think that why we fail in this step is the fact that leaders are often looking for 100% of the information and plan before they communicate it. If you think about either staff meetings or team kickoffs or whatever the communication mode is, it could be an email. Just that communication, I think some leaders want to be able to tell the whole story, the whole picture. But if you start at the beginning, when you first understand that a change is going to take place, start to roll out that information. Let's ease into it. Answer the questions of the employees. That'll help reduce their anxiety level, their stress level, and then also ultimately you want their buy-in. So again, communication is key and we cannot afford to miss it. So that's a good step. Number three, now you're just getting into the execution. You're looking for the resources, getting the assistance, getting the people ready and provide the execution for the change. I think another one that's also skipped is training. So again, leaders often focus on, oh, let's go make the change. Let's put the new software into place. Let's put this new process into execution on the production floor, for example. But they often forget to stop and remember we need to train people so that when a new software is launched, for example, that they're ready for it. There's that anxiety's been reduced. They already know the software. They're ready to execute on the day when you flip the switch and turn on the new program, for example. So training is key and critical as well. And then monitoring after you've implemented the change and it's already been kicked off and in place. We need to be able to make sure that we continue to monitor the changes. We want to track the progress. And again, we're not going to have a 100% solution. If you think about our planning stage and from step one to where step five, we may not have had all the information or things in the environment may have changed. So we need to stop and make those quick little tweaks sometimes. Or there might be major changes that we need to go back and make changes to. But monitoring is going to give us that data, again, data and statistics to be able to understand what changes we need to make. And so again, taking the change management steps from 1 to 5 is how we make that happen. I know I personally have had changes being thrown at me, and we've talked about change fatigue and going through the process. It's key and critical just to understand all these changes, all the steps and processes, and think about it methodically from start to finish. Don't stay in that reactive mode. Let's get into that strategy and planning mode. That's going to be a key to your success. Building resilience. The strength that underlies success. Resilience is another topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I have spent time over the years building my resilience. And again, I like to start off with the definition. We talk about resilience, and it's that ability and capacity for individuals to bounce back after setbacks or thrive during changes of challenge or during times of challenge or change. I know my type A personality, I tend to be able to work better under pressure. Some people do. They work better under pressure. We've got to constantly be doing something and working through the change. Not everyone is able to thrive during times of challenge or change, so they need to learn to build their resilience to be able to get them through the long haul, as well as just making through sure as an individual and for the employees to get everyone through the change. Strategic resilience and why it's so important. Again, we've talked about reactivity. It just isn't sustainable. If we're constantly in that firefighting mode, it tends to wear on the leaders as well as the employees. But if you start to build your resilience, and again, focus on your clear vision and values and your strategic planning to be able to get through this. It's key and critical again to be able to understand that it isn't sustainable and we need to work through the details. And again, strategic resilience. We had no idea that COVID was going to take place at that level. And so just having that resilience build up in organizations, if we have that prioritization for our strategic planning, we're able to then predict market trends, focus on the political shocks and the paradigm shifts, and we're able to react a little bit differently. Not react, again, plan and not be so reactive. And so that's kind of bullet number 2. Number 3 is that we have these large organizations. It could go across multiple teams, across departments and functions. And as we're going through these uncertainties, disruption can really take a toll on the organization. And so whenever I've implemented a change, I always want to make sure that I roll it out not only to my team, but to those other multiple departments that are going to be impacted by the change. And so let's think about this strategically, not just focusing on your own organization and team, but across the whole company, if you will. And then we have executives are often just in this endless loop of emergencies and firefighting. And it's just being able to come to a more strategic approach and address the root causes and don't panic. And so maintaining your cool and calm as a leader is going to then instill that into the team and the employees. And again, we've talked about reactivity and balancing the immediate needs with future strategy. It's always that fine line between focusing on, I need to get this product out to the door today, and then also understanding what you need to change in order to fulfill the strategy and vision for the future. Thinking about the mindset and being positive, I have highlighted in blue, turning disruption into opportunity. I think if we change that mindset and we look at things instead of just being a disruption or a challenge, let's say, I have a new opportunity today. And then that's going to help us frame our mind and our employees as we maintain positivity throughout the cycle. And again, let's support our employees and our teams to be able to get through. Again, communication we talked about earlier. Let's help them if they have conflicting priorities. Let's make those difficult decisions. Let's go through and innovate. I'm always looking for, let's work smarter, not harder. And so, but again, people are resistant to change, but you need to help them understand that if they adopt these innovations, that they're able to be more efficient. Building trust in teams, we talked about that earlier, that 41% don't trust their leaders. You have to build that trust in your teams and make sure that you're fostering and developing that resilience in yourself, as well as looking at supporting your employees. So this is why it's so important. And again, all of this impacts the bottom line, the financial bottom line for a company. But unfortunately, we don't always look at it that way. Resilience is often one of those soft skills, if you will, that we don't always pay attention to. So here are some characteristics of resilience. Again, I just mentioned about seeing difficulties as a challenge instead of paralyzing. Again, perseverance, I always think, let's go back to the word opportunity. And if we explain the next bullet is committed to life purpose, fully engaged purpose, in the military, when I was going through ROTC, yes, way back then, we always said that let's explain the why. During the Vietnam War, one of the largest mistakes was that they didn't tell the individual soldiers the why. Let's just charge that hill. But why? Let's stop and explain the why. Then you give them and individual employees that purpose. The why behind it is going to get them engaged and on board. And so that's, I think, one step that we often forget as leaders. We're always so worried about being in a hurry and not stopping to explain the why. But again, that's an important aspect. Equanimity. Let's talk about, now you have 50 tasks in front of you. And that just, I don't know, it just becomes overwhelming. People approach those 50 tasks in different ways. Go through your list and choose what you're going to work on, what's important, what's critical, what can give you some immediate benefit, and what do you need. And going through that, there's different risk assessments and different layers that you can go through, different techniques to prioritize a task. But you need to stop at those 50 tasks and say, what am I going to ignore and what am I going to focus on? And that's going to help you. Well, it helps me with my stress level, as well as understanding what I can do. Instead of looking at 50 tasks and becoming overwhelmed, let's narrow our scope and focus on the top 5, the top 10, and then prioritize the rest. By the time you get to them, some of them may have fallen off or been overcome by event OBE. And so those 50 tasks might shrink down to 30, if you will. Then the next bullet is being confident that you can manage through a situation and come out on the other side. And that's that self-reliance. Confidence, I always think about some discussions I had with some of the people in one of my previous jobs. We always talked about, we can do this. Yes, we have a change. Oh, we can figure it out. I would always say that. That's all right. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. No problem. We'll figure it out. We can do this. It's having that confidence and self-reliance. And just that became a joke. Sharon, I know you'll just figure it out and we'll make it happen. And then so it's just, again, having that positive mindset and making things go through with the change. And then the last one is they learn and apply that learning to the next challenge. So it's taking that lessons learned. I started to create a database of lessons learned when I was working on this particular project. And as I worked through, I documented lessons learned so that when we went and produced the product the next time, I already knew what challenges we had in the first development, first prototype, if you will, so that now I'm taking the lessons learned. And that helps me in the perseverance. I'm not going to repeat those same mistakes. And again, those resilient people are going to be able to take that one step ahead and have that perseverance in their projects. So again, hopefully we have all these characteristics. If you don't have all of them, again, we talked about growth is intentional. You have to make sure that you are intentionally expanding, adapting, and learning. And you can start to build these different characteristics and looking at the tools that you use, as well as getting through the next process. So be intentional in your learning. And here's the most interesting, the resiliency advantage is an organization. You can look them up on the internet as well. Again, it just talks about resilient people are flexible. They can adapt to new circumstances quickly. They thrive in constant change. Well, I don't know about the thrive in constant change. I do like change. I do like challenges, but that change fatigue is definitely setting in for a lot of folks. And then resiliency is just having the ability to bounce back after we have had these challenges and are working through the task. I like this particular resilience prescription. I took a Women in Leadership at Northrop Grumman, and it was a 2-week long leadership program. This was many years ago. And I was exposed to this science, if you will, of resilience. And I pull this out every once in a while just to kind of refresh my memory on this one. So in the upper right is number 1 is keep a positive attitude. We've discussed that a couple times now. And so that's a common theme throughout all of our building of resilience is keeping a positive attitude and mindset. Number 2 is you can reframe those stressful thoughts. Again, instead of being a challenge, let's think of it as an opportunity and looking at that and just reframe those thoughts. Number 3 is develop your moral compass. Your morals and values are so important and ingrained in everyone that you don't want to give up your morals and values. You want to be able to maintain those as you're working through, and don't ever sacrifice your values. Number 4 is find a resilient role model. So that's what I've typically done over my career is I have found that I always look for those leaders that I want to emulate or be. I want to be like you one day. I remember saying to one of my previous mentors, and I would meet with him every couple weeks and just kind of walk through some of the different things that he's done. And I would ask questions. Why did you do it this way? And so it's often important or a good technique to find that role model and mentor that you can check in with them to see how you can continue to build your resilience. Number five is face your fears. I think we all fear failure. I know I do sometimes. That imposter syndrome will start to set in. But let's face our fears. We can't accomplish anything if we don't get out there and try. So give it a try. Don't be so concerned about failing, but let's face our fears and make it happen. And number six is develop active coping skills. So I've got some examples on the next couple slides to help get through developing some coping skills. Make sure you have your network that's strong. Um, Make sure you have, again, a mentor, a role model, and develop that circle that you can also work with people. I like to work out and run, for example. So I'll go for a run or go work out, and that helps me kind of rejuvenate. That's one of my coping skills, if you will. So let's make sure that we're all taking care of ourselves. There's the supportive social network. So we look for those social networks. It could be our group of friends from church. It could be our girlfriend group. It could be a Chamber of Commerce club. I've found a lot of support lately from this social group. So we just need to make sure that we're still continuing to look for that support network. We talked about prioritizing physical well-being and train your brain. We talked about growth and training. To me, training, I'm still a lifelong learner, if you will, being able to develop my toolkit and continue to go every year to the John Maxwell conferences, because I really feel that if I continue to train my brain, find out and network with other people, attend training. I'm a program management professional, PMP certified. I still have to maintain my credits and recertify every 3 years. So again, I'm just always looking for opportunities to keep my brain active and train. And then 10, play to your strengths. John Maxwell, I know, has, you can look at it a couple different ways. If you have, I use the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. There's 21 laws, and we can't be perfect and great in all of them. But if you look for those couple that are your strengths, make sure that you're focused and going after your strengths. Don't forget to continue to develop the ones that you're weaker at, but play to your strengths and then make sure you're developing your other areas that you aren't so up to speed on, for example. So this is a good science of mastering life's greatest challenges that is important to get us through and help us build our resiliency, if you will. Okay, I'm going to share some personal stories now. And so, again, when your resilience is tested, what do you have in your toolbox? What do you turn to be able to get through the crisis, to get through your challenges? Now, I might be showing my older age, but Vince Lombardi was my hero when I was going through college. What it takes to be number one. I'm not going to read through all of this because it's a long, but you can come back and look at this in the webinar recording. But in essence, for me, I carried that in my notebook, my binder for college. And I always kept telling myself, plan, work harder, and continue to strive, and it'll all come together. And so to me, that was something that I always turned to during those challenging times in school. Just continue to work, apply yourself, study. And I've always been organized. I always had a schedule on what I was working on. So again, you have to put in the work to be successful, is basically what Vince is saying. The middle one, prayer for officers in command. I saw this up on a wall in a barracks as I was going through my first combat tour. And I was a commander in that unit, and I felt very uncomfortable. I had that fear of the unknown. We hadn't left yet. We're still stateside, and we're getting ready to deploy. And I have this whole team that I'm responsible for. And so it was just for me something that I wrote down and carried it in my notebook for the remainder of the deployment to be able to make sure that I am focused and just have that extra, I don't know, it's comfort, if you will. I guess that's a good way to put it as I was leading through the tour. In the upper right, you'll see a display of photos. And these are old photos of my kids. You can see that they're pretty young here. They're in their mid to late 30s now, so I'm sure they're totally probably very embarrassed that I'm showing these. But you could see that I carried this around on my deployments. And if there's something that gives you that resilience and the why am I doing this? Why am I working so hard? And I actually put this up in my office too when I retired and worked in the corporate environment. I carried these with me. So you see, I put some on a poster board. I have some in the frames, and I just always carried that in my duffel bag, and I could pull it out. But that was in my toolkit, my resiliency toolkit. And that kind of gave me that motivation to understand why I'm doing this, and then making sure that I'm keeping up with my studies and making sure that I'm the best that I can be. So the middle one is you have this lone runner, and that's a long road out in front of them. And for me, the race is not always to the swift, but to those who keep on running. And if you think about it in that perspective, I'm not fast runner by any means, but I just keep trudging along and keep going. And so to me, when I was running some of my 10Ks, and then I had that resiliency. I did run a marathon, only one, but I did run one. But that was always something that I kept with me. And the lower right is Michael Jordan. I shared this with my son. I bought one of these large posters and put it in a frame and gave it to him because we had the discussion about failure. And so I mentioned earlier about learning from your failures and don't fear failure. Face it head on. And so Michael Jordan talks about his failures and all of his misses, but he was so successful. So you have to go through the failures and the fear to get out on the other side, which is where you want to be, your objective, if you will. So these are just some examples of what's in my resiliency toolbox. I encourage all of you to look to see what you have in yours and continue to build that so that you're more successful and doing well in the long run. Okay, enough about the personal stories. Okay, so let's talk about the importance of work-life balance. It's just splitting your time up. You have your family, you have your career, your health, your friends. And at some point, they all start to overlap. And then you think about, I'm not doing anything well because I have so many different aspects going on in my life. I don't know that we're ever going to find that perfect balance of work life so that all four of these circles in the lower right, for example, are all even. Some may take higher priority at different times, but it's recognizing and understanding what you can do to achieve more of a work-life balance. And that's the center circle is the life balance because it kind of encompasses all of those. So as leaders and for ourselves also, we try to think about I'm going to use the COVID pandemic as an example because that was one of those more extreme cases, if you will. But we had to look at our employees and be a little bit more flexible. Before it was like, no, you have to work, well, we worked early. We started work at 5 a.m. and didn't leave till 3. But being able to flex those schedules, for example, or let people work from home more often, making sure that we let folks take their vacations and unplug from vacations. I think about I always say, don't do what I did. But I would always take my work phone with me. And then at some point, I said, no, I need to be able to unplug. And so I also made sure that my employees didn't have to maintain and be on their work phone, managing emails while they're on vacation, because it's extremely important. So you have to also lead by example, unplug from your work so that you can enjoy the vacation and recharge. And that's the next bullet is vacations are not a luxury, they are a necessity. There was a time period where I was a program manager for a new program. It was a build to print, very challenging. It was our first prototype. I worked a solid 3 years without taking much of a vacation. And so what happened is I felt I got burnt out and I just wasn't performing as well. So I learned for myself that I ended up getting sick and I had to take several weeks off. But at that point, I think we need to watch out for ourselves, make sure we're managing our employees for their vacations. Let's schedule that and make sure that we have backup plans, just kind of working through all of that. I think that's definitely going to help the process. The next bullet is so important. I think that we've recognized all of those anxieties and feelings and the mental health crisis that I described earlier. We need to stop and encourage our employees to seek assistance when they need help and make sure we do it ourselves too. But let's encourage folks to use the employee assistant programs or let them know of what resources are available and just kind of keeping an eye out for each other and ensure that we're taking care of ourselves and our employees. The last one is mindfulness activities. When I heard this, I'm like, oh, it sounds like a bunch of, you know, who cares about mindful activities, meditation, yoga, all of that. But it has been proven over time that if we incorporate some of these mindful activities, and I've got some information on the next slide, that we could become more effective. And if we just take time for ourselves, let me go ahead and switch to the next slide. Some things that I've looked at, again, because my type A personality, and I'm a very stressed and anxious person. I like things done today, now, not later. So I've picked up the application Calm. There are a few other apps out there that folks can use. Headspace, Insight Timer, mindful apps. Just stop and take yoga. Or if you don't believe in a lot of this stuff, you can just stop and do your breathing techniques. Get away from your desk at lunchtime. Make sure you're getting out for the walks. Get some fresh air. This mindfulness is extremely important. And because of my military background, it's like, we don't need to worry about this. Take 2 Tylenol and drive on. I always joke. But I think we need to stop and recognize that we need to take care of our mental health. I'll put a plug out there. My daughter is an MFT, a marriage family therapist. And if I don't stop and take care of myself, she's constantly reminding me. So I have a built-in MFT, so she's always looking out for me. But again, just I think that's going to help your overall well-being, not just the physical aspects, but your mindfulness resources. And I believe this is the last slide. And so we're going to end up here perfectly, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A time. So return on investment. So you hear a lot of businesses, employees, leaders, if you will. All of that takes money. It takes longer. I just want the product out the door. I don't care how you get there. But if we stop and take care of our employees and we invest in their well-being, we invest in their vacations, we invest in change management, if we invest in building resilience, if we invest in that communication plan, we're going to get a lot back on our return on investment, if you will. So employees, there's going to be less turnover. They're not going to go through that burnout stage that we talked about earlier. They're going to have a better work-life balance, and that improves their happiness, their overall well-being. It also increases their productivity. So imagine that if we take time and invest these actions and resources, they're going to be more productive. Again, morale is just going to be so much more increased. They're going to be happier at work, and again, just they're going to express an overall improved physical and emotional well-being from the work-life balance. And I believe that's it. So thank you so much for your time. Again, near and dear, I could talk about this stuff all day, but here's some contact information if you want to follow up after today's session as well. So I'll turn it back over to Nick or Kylie, and we'll do a wrap up or open it up for Q&A.
Okay, for those watching in the attendee room right now, if you have any questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. In the meantime, I have my own question to pose. So,
Sure.
if you are a leader and you see things breaking down, within your team, how do you start those conversations? I know you said communication is key, but if you start seeing those things, how do you kickstart the change and make sure that your team is comfortable and confident in you as a
Mhm.
leader?
Mhm. I've done a couple different techniques in that aspect. I think it's making sure that we hold those one-on-one conversations with our employees. In our staff meetings, we would also get a lot of feedback. I did notice that, though, in staff meetings and more public forums, people weren't as open with sharing their concerns. And then I've also done surveys. The company would do their much larger, Gallup polls or whatever they would use, but you can survey your own employees. And if you hold more of the one-on-ones or an anonymous type surveys, you're going to get some feedback. So it's that feedback and asking questions. But if you get the feedback and the recommended changes, we started to use like a our list of changes and projects. And so but if you commit to making a change, make sure you make the change and you follow through. You can make those changes as the large team and have those discussions, again, how to prioritize them. We don't want all 50 projects, but just working through and understanding what's important for all of the employees and kind of getting that feedback from the team. Mhm.
Sharon, I just want to offer my thanks and gratitude for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom today. I absolutely agree too. I think unpredictability is absolutely the new normal. And I think that leads to some degree of uncertainty because each day may shift. And with that,
Mhm.
building inner strength, it becomes such a vital component of not only building resilience, but also working through some of the turbulent times that we have. Every one of your slides, I think, is really a great doorway for even greater discovery for individuals
Mhm.
that are listening to the podcast. And I know you're certainly available to help them navigate through those times as well. But the slide that really struck me very clearly was, I think, it was slide 18, which was your resilience prescription. And I think that is oh so important. And I'm so
Mhm.
glad that you're able to share your expertise and the study behind that, because at least in my humble experience, change comes
Mhm.
to us really in three different dimensions, and there's this intersectionality between that. Change
Mhm.
that's done to you, change that you do to others, and change that you do to yourself. And it's not a
Mhm.
linear process. So this slide really spoke wonders for me because it really looks at a holistic process for someone to be stronger in their inner strengths and their
Mhm.
confidence, because it's not only the unpredictability and uncertainty sometimes you deal with, it's not a linear path, as I said, and it can
Mhm.
rotate through that circle over and over again,
Mhm.
almost sometimes on a daily basis. So building
Mhm.
those capabilities as an empowering leader becomes such a strength that one individual can have and then share with their team. So thank you for the time today. We look forward in working with you at even deeper levels because I think You're right. Sometimes change management becomes maybe a backdoor item on the agenda, and it should
Hmm.
always be a front-facing door because it helps individuals and teams understand the certainty of what you can do, and more importantly, predicting some of the future things that may be on your plate. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us today.
My pleasure. And again, thank you for all of the support from the chamber. It's been such a warm welcome since I'm new to the Morgan Hill as well as the organization. And again, with the new business launching, I do appreciate all your support.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the webinar today. Tell your friends, this will be recorded. This is recorded, so it will be uploaded to the Chamber YouTube channel, and you can share it with whoever you think might benefit from it. Looks like the chat is mostly just people saying thank you for the presentation and that you
Oh,
did a great
thank
job.
you.
So I guess we will wrap up here. If you have any further questions for Sharon, you can reach out to her contact information. I'm guessing she's going to go right back to that slide.
Yep, I'll go back to that slide.
So go ahead and send her an email, send her a chat, call her, get in touch, sign up for one of her future web talks. You can follow her at momentumleadership.Sharon Wagner on Facebook. You can also follow the chamber at Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce and at MHCOC on Instagram. And you'll be able to know when we do more of these webinars with our members. So again, look out for the recorded version of this. And thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, Sharon, for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.